So what was the process that we went through with Growth Point? Well, the most important thing to know about it was long. And I think that for people coming in, this is something that you have to be aware of, that you're not going to sell the company in a day. In fact, ours took 2.5 years. So what we began with was developing the story. The first thing the Growth Point guys said was, hey, you're going to need a slide deck. 20 slides that just tell the story of your company in a way that we can send around and people will immediately grasp what you're doing. They said it would take 6 weeks. Actually, it took at least a year. And it wasn't just creating the slides, it was creating the story behind the slides and then being able to say it eloquently, concisely, and quickly so that we could make a quick impression on people who were interested in us. Not only did we create slides, but we actually went ahead and created extensions to our software. Of those, perhaps the most important that Growth Point advised us to do was to create a graphical user interface that showed our technology off. We do database clustering. It's a very complex technology. This GUI allowed us to present the technology in a way that anybody, even somebody not familiar with our technology, could instantly see and understand how our technology worked. And that was probably the best piece of technical advice they gave us in the whole process. Once that was done, and once the GUI was ready, we began a long process of interviews. And we had at least 2 cycles of potential acquirers that we went through. So they would set up calls, they would report status. When they got somebody that seemed interesting, we would then set up a call. We probably did dozens of these over the course of the 2 years. And then once we did have, of course, people who had greater interest that went beyond a single call. Some, of course, would just say, oh, nope, not interested, in which case we'd move on. But there were a couple of acquirers with whom we actually did a long and fairly elaborate dance. In one case, one that went on almost a year, that involved integrating our software with their technology, meeting all their staff. And so this was a very long and in-depth relationship that developed with this company that in the end came to nothing. So Growth Point shepherded us through that entire process, helped us understand whom to meet next, how to present ourselves at each level in the management chain. And then finally, what happened was after a couple of false starts with different acquirers, we met up with VMware, who was the company that ultimately acquired us. This was somebody that Growth Point had talked to in the past. The answer had been no. They talked to him again. The answer was no. They talked to him again, and the answer was, hey, remember those guys we talked to you about? Well, we want to see them because we're ready now. And so they then shepherded us through that process, which was a very rapid escalation from interviews, meeting the staff, demonstrating the technology, into actually the negotiations required to get a term sheet, and then, of course, the detailed work to go through due diligence and sign a definitive agreement. And at every step of the way, Growth Point was helping us, doing legwork, pointing us in the right direction so that we could use our limited resources most effectively. And that was basically this process, which started out really intense, developing the story, kind of had this period where we were intermittently talking to people, and then had this incredibly intense 3-month cycle at the end where we got the deal done.